I think recruiting at every level, if you can't recruit, you can't win. You have to learn how to recruit.
I will not go below 30 unless the player's an absolute stud as far as work ethic.
We'll congratulate each other and chug some beers if somebody wins a national championship.
If they did, don't you think I'd have 2 championships by now? I might have 3.
Now, I know Cash uses those booster gifts. He's always promising cash and women, right?
I've only been caught twice. That's it.
Don't know why that started up again. Anyway, welcome to the show. I'm your host, Majique. It is the end of September. Wow. And summer is pretty much gone. We're into football season now, aptly so. This is a football dynasty show. So for those of you who are first timers tuning in, welcome. A little bit different. If you're not too familiar with the game, then this may be a bit strange to you. I know there's some friends of mine that said they were going to tune in and check us out. Anyway, tonight we're going to have WIS staffer Jordan on with us, and he's going to hopefully provide us a bit of insight as to the pending updates that some of the guys mentioned several months ago. I think there was a November, December time frame that they were looking at, so we'll get his input on how that's progressing and any new things that are coming up or any of those things that were thought to be coming up that have been terminated. So we'll catch up with him and get his thoughts and information that he's got for us tonight. And also brief touchly on the TTATO Fantasy Football League. A lot of good action going on in that thing. And I'm sure that there'll be some interest next year to join if some of the other coaches decide not to return. But anyway, let's get Jordan on here so he can lie to us and tell us what's great. Hey, Jordan.
Hey, can you hear me okay?
No, I can't hear you.
Can't hear me at all?
Yeah, we can hear you.
It's like it wasn't picking up very good, so I wasn't sure.
So what you got going on, man? What's new in the world?
Me personally or what if sports are both?
No, you personally.
Me personally, no, not much. I mean, still working like crazy. Getting my feet into this what if sports quite a little bit. Feeling a little more confident about some of the stuff, learning some of the stuff. It comes up pretty frequently, so it's good. It's good.
Yeah, and we have to remind people too. This is not your 9-to-5 job, so to speak. This is an additional duty, if you will, from your normal lifetime.
Yeah.
And to me, the job that you're doing would be a full-time job. I mean, I know that there's enough activity going on just in GD to know that you guys are staying busy. I can't imagine when you compile that with baseball.
Yes, I mean, I'm on it. I'm on it a lot. I mean, they have me, like my set schedule is actually a full-time job, but I kind of work it to where I'm doing it aside too, because I'm on what if sports most of the day anyway. So I'm like, I might as well sit on and do my job too. You know what I mean? So yeah, I haven't actually totaled the hours I'm really doing, but I'm on quite a bit.
Now I know you're actually still active in the game.
Correct.
So it's not like you have severed the player ties and are working behind the scenes. You're still doing both. Now, some people would say that in of itself gives you a distinct advantage over those of us who don't have the ability to see behind the scenes. But as we mentioned before, and for the sake of those who are just now being aware of this, there is very limited stuff that you actually have access to. So
correct.
It's probably more hindrance to your game playing than it is a benefit because you're so busy otherwise.
Yeah, I mean, I've definitely, between the two accounts now, my personal one and then the one I've set up through the What if Sports staff, I've got games going now on both of them. So I think combined, I'm doing like 13 different games or something like that across the What if Sports. So GD, HD, HBD, Sim League Baseball, all of it. So yeah, it takes a lot of time. And yeah, to your point, I don't see any of the code or anything fun like that. I have some tools where I can change some people's names or whatever without having to send a
thank you for that, by the way.
Yeah, you're welcome.
I have a tendency to recruit guys that are already on my team. I don't know how that happens. There are only so many
feel like you go out and
Johnsons
find
out there.
You go out and find them.
Yeah, no matter how bad they suck. I looked at my roster. This is before you came on, and I think there were like 3 guys with the same name. And I'm like, and with my spreadsheet that I've got set up, it looks for that name. And if it sees 3 of them, well, all 3 of them will have the attributes of the first name it saw. So if that guy's an offensive lineman and the same name players at defensive back and quarterback, man, those other 2 guys suck, and I have to adjust my
Right.
spreadsheet to make sure I got different names.
Yeah,
But
well, and even if they're close enough, it's hard to, because it only
Yeah.
does the first couple letters of their first name. So
Yeah. So tell the folks about how they'd go about changing a name, because I know I've actually fielded a couple in the past, some queries about, hey, I got 2 guys on the team.
So, I mean, for the most part, anything that comes in, or for anybody who hasn't done it, if you got 2 names that are pretty similar, or honestly, I don't want you to please don't flood my ticket box with these, but if you wanted a name change for whatever reason, you can just open a a What a Sports support ticket, and then just say you want, this guy, helps if you have the position, especially if there's 2. But say the position, his name, what you want his name to, if you have something you want it to go to, and I pretty much just hop in there and type in the name you want and save it. It's pretty easy.
Yeah, and we're not gonna, I say we, WIS is not gonna allow folks to just come up with some kind of slanderous name or
it would have to be
name.
appropriate,
I mean,
of course.
It
Yes.
has
Yeah.
like
thank you for helping
DB
me clarify.
Yeah, you get you a DB that's named Coverback or something.
Yeah, I'm gonna have a ton of tickets tomorrow with a bunch of inappropriate names. I can tell.
You blame it on this show.
Yeah,
but it does make a big difference. I know a lot of people out there have different ways that they track their team, and some still use pen and ink, so it wouldn't really be that big of a deal. But especially if you've got them at the same position, and you're looking at that play-by-play breakdown to see who's on the field, and we did a tutorial on that that you're more than willing to share. I can give that one to you as well, where you can actually see, that it shows so-and-so linebacker, but you're like, well, which one of those is it actually? There's really no way to discern which one it was. Was it my freshman that I'm getting playing time for? Or was it the guy that, is my senior that's the stud, and I'm trying to sub him out and he's not coming out of the game, and I don't know what's going on because I can't tell who's who. So it's beneficial to have those names, be very unique. And of course, we all know that there's player identifiers. Each player has its own, I think it's like a 10-digit ID code or something that you can use, but a lot of people don't even use that. They use the name. So personally, thanks for helping out with that. As I try not to recruit those guys similarly on the team, but you yourself, you've got 13 teams that you're managing across the spectrum. You've got to run into that yourself from time to time.
Yeah, I did. Actually, right before I came on, I had one with GD where I had, since I wasn't part of the staff at the time, had them go in and edit it. But for the most part, I actually have found I don't get it all that much. I don't, just maybe luck of the draw. But yeah, it's definitely a lot to maintain all the teams and trying to keep everything straight. Thankfully, it's like I try to focus more on my personal one than the What If Sports one. But of course, to help me, like, especially in the games that I don't know very well, I really try on those ones so that I can learn, some of the nuances and some of the less intuitive parts of the game, so that when I get those tickets about why X, Y, and Z happened, I can maybe have at least a little bit of backing or understanding as to why. So
exactly. And I know some of the previous developers have also taken that approach to where they'll have a team and actually play the game, and sometimes just let the team sit dormant while they're focusing elsewhere. And that in of itself is really good, because it does allow that person to immerse himself into that game to get the better understanding of how it's performing, what some of the glitches may be that have appeared that haven't self-resolved, or whatever the case may be. But speaking to that about letting that team go dormant while they're focusing somewhere else, I know one of the current hot topics on the forum is about a team that has a coach who, for whatever reason, is no longer active with that team, and he's let it sit dormant for a year or two, and you can tell because his roster is filling up quickly with sim players. There was some answers given, but go ahead and tell us what can happen to such a team if an individual does say, let's have a 10-pack, and he's into year 3, but he's not even responding to emails from customer support.
Yeah, so I mean, if it gets to that point, and we have actually had some of these tickets, it seems to be obviously way more prominent in hardball. because you have to have the 32 active members. But hoops, it comes up fairly frequently. Not so much GD, I think, probably because there's so many teams that people don't really care so much. But yeah, we do have tickets occasionally come in where a user's team, for if it's a human coach, will suffer worse than like a normal sim AI team, because the sims that are generated for the human team typically tend to be worse than what the already computerized team might randomly generate.
Right.
But I mean, if it's something that's really impacting your conference, or you really, really want that team, I mean, we can look into it. We've done some digging around to see, 'cause, like the Hoops Dynasty is the most common example that I can think of right now, where, users killing a really prominent program and just not active, but he's active on his other teams. So we kind of sent site mails out to him like, hey, why are you active on your D2 but not your Michigan State team? And he no response. And so it came to a point where we didn't kick him out of the team, but we did remove like the auto renew on him, and that
perfect.
Said, hey, we sent you a site mail. We've tried to contact you. Other users have tried to contact you. You're not being active. That's not good for the world or the game. And that, at the end of the day, that's kind of what I have to take, as much as I won't have like a player bias. At the end of the day, I need these games to be successful. I mean, it's my job now. So I want the world to be happy and all the users to be happy. So
when you mentioned briefly about the sim recruited teams versus a human coach team that gets a sim on there, and I alluded to that a little bit in the forums, and there's going to be some people who aren't aware, and correct me if I'm wrong, but if you're a human and you're recruiting, whether you fill every slot but one or don't fill any slots, that sim that gets assigned to your team by your assistant coach will be from whatever's available at the end of the recruiting cycle. Essentially, you get the dregs of the barrel to be put on your team. Now, if that team itself is a sim team to where the sim is controlling it and the sim is recruiting for it, those sims get to see it pretty much everything within their division range, kind of like the best vision that's out there. They get that and they pick, and that's why you see it right before recruiting starts, all these sim teams on all these players, is because they're picking from those players that are available, and hence they'll be signing some of those players. So it stands to reason that a sim coach team will generally have better quality players than a coached team that gets a sim assigned to it. That sim guy is going to pretty much suck.
Right.
Am I in the ballpark on that?
Well, I think so. I think you're pretty close. I think that actually, though, some of those recruits that do generate, particularly for humans, or excuse me, for the sim AI, are actually like randomly new generated players. I've seen on now, we don't necessarily guess is just a gauge, but if you're gonna, a lot of GD users go off a guess. I've seen where a sim signed like the number 3 tight end in the country and no one knew about him on their boards or anything like that. So I think the initial launch of recruiting, obviously, the sims are out on everybody that's legitimately out there. But then I think once it gets to the end, I don't think the engine pulls like the best available D2 and signs them up to your D1. I think sometimes it just randomly generates a player, and the humans tend to get the short end of the stick on that because they get the worse players than a sim might generate for them itself, if you will.
Okay, well, that explains, and that makes a lot of sense because, there's only so many good players to go around. And if the humans are battling for those guys and winning those battles, it would stand to reason that over a period of time, those sim coach teams would even diminish further, thus making them less of a competitor. So, by them being able to pull in some guys that aren't necessarily available to humans during the natural recruiting cycle would help keep them on a level playing field, at least for the most part.
Right. And I think what would be nice, too, is, it's not been talked about, but something that HD does is it'll actually, like, if a team cuts a player or, a player isn't getting playing time, they will actually transfer out, they will get cut, and they will actually hit the recruiting pool. So those players are out there. We don't have that in GD. You rescind a guy's scholarship, he's just gone into a void. I think something where we had, we've mentioned it before, or you mentioned it on the show, the transfer portal to an extent or something like that, where, players who aren't playing or players who got cut, they have opportunity to still be within the game. I think that would be cool. But it's not in talks right now, but I think it'd be fun.
Well, what is in the box right now? Let's get to the meat of the discussion. I know you've got limited time tonight, so
Yeah,
go
you're
ahead
good.
and tell us what is going on. I'm going to step out for a second.
Oh, yeah, no problem. I'll just it's like talking to myself. But yeah, so within the games right now, the devs have kind of split off onto two tiers. We are currently having one kind of focus on updates to the current game engine, and that's to all the games. So all the games are getting, minor updates here and there. We've got a Trello board out there for you coders and things, what that might be. But we have a Trello board of the different things that they want to kind of tackle. Then they kind of prioritize them as we go, and then move them into testing and all that kind of stuff. So we're currently working on the current games that way. And then Chris has actually started kind of a second branch, if you will. We're kind of calling it a 2-branch strategy, where we're actually kind of working on some of the base coding for all of the games to kind of maybe make some future updates or rewrites or something like that. Something where the code is a little more uniform. Because a lot of you who've been around the game for a while might know that we've had a lot of different developers in the game, a lot of different cooks with their hand in the jar and all that, or in the pot or whatever the term is. And so it's kind of a mess. The devs, there's some of the stuff that they say they're like, honestly, like it's weird how it's working or whatever, but it's working. So we're trying to clean that up a little bit so it's a little more uniform, a little easier to understand, so that if someone at some point came in down the road, it wouldn't be so hard for them to figure out kind of what's going on. As far as GD specific, some things that we kind of have, the playoff is kind of the first thing coming out, and we're kind of hoping that's soon. We are starting to kind of work on that in the testing side of things, make sure that it will populate properly, make sure teams get put in there properly, teams that shouldn't be in there don't get in there, that kind of thing. It follows the ranking system, all that kind of stuff. So that's kind of working on the testing, and that's like the big thing coming out for GD right now. I know there's just some other like minor things they want where, if you renew a team, you can undo that, some other stuff like that. But as far as GD, like the biggest thing right now is the playoffs. I think anything major otherwise, we're going to kind of wait and see. I know you had kind of alluded to maybe like a 4.0 coming out in November or December. Right now, that's on the back burner. We ran into issues with licensing and stuff like that. So that's we're kind of waiting, and maybe that'll be part of that second branch that we are working on.
Man, that's good information, and it's kind of flowing along as we envisioned, or at least me, I envisioned that there would be some nuances brought into the game that you have seen as a popular request on the boards or even during the show. Having a D1A playoff, I think is phenomenal. My only, if I can throw my penny in the wishing well, it would be that it's not structured like the current one, where there's in real life where there's 4 teams, because that's going to evolve to 8. I envision it to be at 8 teams before too long. So I'd like to see that, we have something like that as well. Not necessarily the 32 teams,
right,
like we have at the lower.
Well, the playoffs is coming to D1, but I don't know how much to divulge right now, just because I kind of like full unveil it. But
Jordan
we're bringing it
promised.
to D1. Yeah. Well, we're bringing it out to D1, and we're kind of set on some things because we're also like, we don't know where the real life playoffs going to stop. They're talking about maybe voting on it soon at 12. Then they say now 12 is not going to be possible. Maybe now they're going to do 16. So it's like there's no point in us trying to rewrite a code right now and then all of a sudden now we got to add 4 teams, whatever. So we're trying to kind of figure that out, and just get at least a playoff out there and then see kind of what it looks like from there.
Now, I do know that in the past, when a competitive platform who uses the name of a former head coach of the Oakland Raiders and a Monday night sportscaster, the college, that was a pro version, and then there was a college version of that. It has pretty much been gone for 10 years or so, and there's talk now of that thing being back out now because of the new licensing with the individual players, etc. That football platform, whether it's on Sony PS platforms or Gamebox or who knows what, PC, that's coming. It's a reality that it will be here soon. Now, having said that, I do recall that when that game was no longer available, it was like within a couple months, there was a major growth in What If Sports. People joined this particular platform to feed that hunger of that dynasty feel or that being able to coach. So my question and my concern is, we've seen the numbers dwindle. Maybe because a lot of people are waiting for the upcoming changes or the big splash that will make What If Sports a brighter, shinier toy, basically. Has there been any talk behind the scenes of any type of retention strategy when this new game does come out with the NCAA college football?
Yeah. So that's why we had issues with the licensing thing, is once EA kind of did their thing. Yeah. But as far as, retention has always been kind of one of the most difficult things for What If Sports anyway. We kind of saw some figures a few weeks ago, and the numbers are kind of astonishing. Like, we actually get a pretty good number in a month. We just retain a very, very low percentage. And so that's been something we've trying to talk about and trying to figure. And that's why on the forums, actually, some of you may have seen, some of you may not, for the major games, so the Sim League Baseball, the Hardball, and all the Dynasty games, I've actually posted, we're trying to update the help guides. More specifically, I think the player guides themselves, because what we're looking to try to do is, forums are great, forums are helpful. No one wants to dedicate hours to learning, or, people maybe don't even want to reach out and try to find that mentor, even though there's a ton of helpful people, there's a little bit of anxiety there. And so for us, we're trying to find a way that maybe makes it easier for your users to learn the mechanics of the game, and some things that maybe aren't as intuitive, or, maybe make sense in real life, but don't in the game. And just kind of divulge some of that, whether it be in just a more simplified reading form, or, we've talked about videos, just even if it's put on by a user, just to give some basics. Because I think with all the games, what we're kind of seeing is that it boils down to new users unable to pick up the game quick enough and feeling like failures quickly. Exactly. And no one wants to stay around if you're going to lose, so we're trying to figure out, if we can get the information out, we're kind of hoping that will help. As far as like any other strategies, we haven't really dove into that yet. I think we're trying to get maybe more of stable with where we're currently at as the platform as a whole. But yeah, retention is something we're still trying to figure out, and advertising, all that kind of stuff.
Now, I don't live, eat, and sleep What If Sports, contrary to what my wife may say. but the thought has occurred to me that at D3, an individual pays his $10, he gets his team, he plays that 1 year, and he's picked up an average, run-of-the-mill sim team, and he's run into a couple coach buzzsaws out there. And he really, like you said, he has an awful taste in his mouth for a satisfaction of the game. My thinking, I'm out of the box with this one, is the D3 schools that are sims, this ties back to what we talked about earlier, have those sims that are being recruited for those all sim schools much higher quality than percentage wise than you have at the other levels. That would build a sim team that is actually out of the gate a lot more competitive against the humans. And it will also allow that new coach with that team to be able to have the computer compensate for some of his errors or lack of skill, to where he does receive a few more wins, or maybe does eke himself into the playoffs and increases that satisfaction, thus increasing the retention. The con to that is, I'm at D3 coaching, I'm already battling these sims, and now a new coach is coming in and he's getting a team that's better than me. So maybe I should hop from sim to sim. But now you get the reputation and the loyalty concerns. So, there's so many crevices in that thought or in that process. And that speaks to what you guys face in the backgrounds. The person that brings a concern to you guys is tunnel vision, and he really doesn't see the overall picture. So what are your thoughts, or has something like that been discussed?
Yeah, so to what you kind of ended on there, I think definitely seeing like what a sports from this side, I wasn't really stuck in things I necessarily thought needed to be done with the game anyway, but it definitely, I've seen a lot where it's like I'll run something by Chris, like, oh hey, what about this? And he'll come back. He's very good at like he has these counter like I don't know, I won't call them like worst case scenarios, but something he can see
Sure,
going
yeah,
wrong, and it helps provide that perspective of
yes.
oh, I wouldn't have even thought a user would try to manipulate it that way or whatever.
Oh yeah, I would.
Yeah. So I mean, that's the kind of the toughest thing is we trying to constantly like check and balance, like how can this be manipulated? How can we put a check in there so that's not so bad, or leaning one too heavy one way or the other. But something to your point as far as the Sims, I think it's kind of a gray area on that too, because it happens in hoops, like I said, where the players that are cut or transferred, whatever, they go back out to the pool. So a Sim could actually sign that player who's only got 2 years of eligibility left, but he's a really good player, right?
Right.
And I got a pretty decent team right there in D2 right now, and I'm losing to Sims as it is. So that's our thing is like, yeah, it makes it great for someone to come in and take over a Sim and be able to be competitive more or less right away, or right. As you said, get better players out the gate. But here's the other side is now I've got an established coach who loses to the Sim who got a few studs one year in recruiting, and now I'm going to have tickets about why they're losing to a Sim. So it's very hard to please everybody. I think we've dubbed it impossible, but we definitely try. But I think there's maybe like a in between we could do, or maybe you get decent players, generate decent players for them, not necessarily terrible, to where the Sim, at least, if you played them with an established human team, or even maybe a 3-year rebuild, you might only beat them by 10 or 14, but at least, you're not going to worry about losing them, especially, like come playoffs or something like that. I mean, that could be definitely something we look into. I think right now, like I said, we kind of just left the player generation as is, trying to focus on maybe more updating and modernizing parts of it first.
And for the Sims too, one of the things I know we've talked about formation IQ in the past as well, and this has been brought up, but for Sims, as soon as that coach leaves that team and that season gets rolls over to the next season, the practice time goes to that default 6 minutes across the board or select few setting. I would think that part of the niceness of having right now the focus on making tiny little changes would be to isolate, a particular team to 2 offenses and maybe 1 or 2 defenses. And the next Sim team, based on coding or whether it's a team ID or whatever, maybe that one runs, shotgun and trips and uses a nickel and a dime for defense. And the next one may run a I and a pro and use a 3-4 and a 4-4. But right now, coaches basically beat Sims because they don't have to do anything. And if that change were to happen, now every time you play a Sim, you do have to do some coaching as far as game planning and scouting, because you make sure that you have the right defense set up. And I think that would take some of the boredom out of the game for those of us who, schedule Sims or are in a conference rather that have a schedule with Sims, because it does keep you active rather than just hit and click on Monday and checking back on Friday.
Right. Well, and that could be something we could maybe look into too, because Hoops Dynasty does have that, I think. So like the last coach that stays in there, like whatever formation has the highest IQ, they stay practicing that on offense and defense. So I don't know what it looks like for the devs. Some of the stuff that I'm like, oh, you guys should be able to, work this fairly quick. It's like, no, like this is super elaborate code here. Yeah. So, something, because there are some stuff that I think Hoops Dynasty has, right? I don't like the recruiting side so much, but there are parts of it that I think that it does. And that could be one of them, is implement where it just stays practicing whatever the last coach was. Or as you said, maybe they do that, but then so that if someone else wants to come in, they don't have to still do the complete formation reset. It could also pick, I don't know, a second random formation or whatever that they also practice, so that it at least provides some options.
Yeah. And, the other thing too that it would do, because we're talking about all the branches that come off of one idea, the what ifs, hence the name of the game. But, what if a team has been a Sim for 7, 8, 10 years running shotgun and trips, and a new coach to Division II has moved up to Division II rather, and he wants to do nothing but run a game that is, shotgun and trips. And as he's looking for those jobs that are available, he can look at the formation IQs of these teams and see, oh, that one may be in a fertile recruiting area, but they're a wishbone Notre Dame team. Oh, this one may not be in the best recruiting area, but hey, they run shotgun and trips based on their formation IQ. And that would help make some of the selection process, because right now, essentially, it's just where can I get the most recruits with the least pressure, and what team has the best winning record, or what team is returning the most seniors so I can get a big bang for my buck next year. It's but I think those nuances would really enhance the selection process.
Yeah, no, I agree.
You're writing this down, right?
I mean, I definitely try to take notes, even on tickets. If people submit them, last week we meet every week, me, Jacob, and Chris. And I told him, I was like, I got a spreadsheet of stuff that people submit tickets. I'm not trying to take like every little like idea that people have, but it's like ones that I'm like, oh, I could see, that being beneficial. And, they even said, if it's something that's a quick fix or ties into what we're already updating, like they have no problem throwing that kind of thing in. So
good deal. So what is the next best thing that's going to happen as far as this deal about the coaches who sit idle for 6 years? the idle game plan.
I actually had a really long ticket about that this week.
From Daryl?
No, it wasn't from Daryl. I'm waiting for him.
I'm telling you, and I know Daryl watches the show, so I don't mind saying it. If the show ever gets boring or starts to slow down, I just poke Daryl with, hey, what about that guy that was out for 8 years? Oh, that son of a spin him right up.
And that's something I think we could be addressed. But here's kind of what my point of view was in the ticket response I said, because someone had basically this, I watch your show pretty regularly, so I know Daryl's stance very well. And this ticket came in and it was a similar stance to where Daryl is. And for those of you who don't watch, a lot of coaches don't like that someone can be, retired from a world for a while, have a good resume when they retired, and then they come back and out of nowhere they swipe a good team when someone who's currently active in the world missed out on them. And their argument is that, they're currently active in the world. Why, they should be able to get the job over someone who's been sitting and idle. And kind of what I responded in the ticket to that was, I think there could be something in there, but where you kind of have that where it kind of becomes an issue is, that guy hasn't been active, but he put in the same amount of work to create the program he did at the time. Yeah, it was 10 years ago, and now he's sitting idle. And, I can understand where that is as far as it came out of nowhere for you. But he also put in the work to create his resume he did. So why does that guy now deserve to be punished for having equally, or in this case, better resume for getting the job if they sat out? You know what I mean? I totally get it as far as, you feel like you're continuously actively working on it and they aren't. But I mean, at the same time, they were at one point actively working on it too, and I'm not steering one way or another. This is something that I very much see both points of view on, but that was kind of my counter argument to it is how do you make it fair for the guy who has set out? And then if you do dock him when he comes back, so say he left an elite, had personal reasons that he left. It wasn't even because he was bored. Yeah. Now he only qualifies for mid-majors. That's not fair to him either. So it's, I don't know if there's going to be a solution on that. I would like for us to be able to find something, but it's kind of a slippery slope either way you go, I think.
I have a feeling that when our grandchildren or great-grandchildren are playing this game, that'll be a topic.
Yes, one of the never-ending
probably still
political debates.
that one in at D3, which running back position is your fullback? That's usually another one. I think Shannon brings that one up all the time.
For the most part, those seem to stay in the forums. I haven't gotten too many of those ones, so people know where to look for information at least. Yeah,
we'll make that change. Well, listen, I know you got to skid out of here, and we do appreciate you coming on. Feel free to close out with anything else you want to add, but we definitely appreciate you, putting a face to the background, like what Adam was doing and Chris from time to time. So anytime, come on the show. Just drop me a note, and we can go off schedule and make one next Thursday. We don't have to be on every other Thursday. So
okay, yeah, no, perfect.
Definitely appreciate it.
Yeah, thanks.
And you're more than welcome to hang around. There's no comment section. There's nothing in the comments. So, I mean, you're getting off
night.
pretty easy.
Yeah, that works.
Hello, is this mic on?
I think Adam tried that the grilling session or whatever at some point. I don't know if I feel like maybe up to that, but maybe as we get more more changes bringing out and stuff or whatever, we can do like a council thing and see what people have to say or what they hate or like.
Yeah, and exactly. And with the tweaks that are being rolled out, if you ever need guys to step in or gals to step in and in a secret world, what would call it, a beta world, and actually run the gamut. And I think we played like 2 or 3 games a day just so we would have the data points to analyze. I'm in. All you got to do is let me know when and where, and I'm sure many of our listeners do. And if it comes to the point where you guys want to advertise that there's a need or solicit those coaches for the beta or whatever, if the forum doesn't get you the numbers you want, come on the show and those numbers will drop.
Sure, definitely, yeah, appreciate it. And on that little plug, if anyone. I still got that post out there for the GD out there in the GD world. If you guys want to help with the help guides, I'm only looking for one. If you want to collab with 1 or 2 other guys, that's completely fine. It's not like a set format. We are just asking that it's like unbiased, where you're not taking what your formula is to win and you just know the mechanics of the game. I posted out there, we'll throw some site credits your way. You won't get paid, but we'll throw some site credits your way.
Well, the offer is still there. If at any time you want to use anything that we've had here on the forum that you can't pull off using Snagit or whatever, just let me know what email to send that to, and I can forward those JPEGs, or I think some of them are actual, MP4s, some audio files, and some of them are actual or M4As, whatever. I'm not a techie, but I have my dog come in and set this up for me so I can get on every other Thursday. But, I can email those files to you and let you run with them,
I think I definitely plan. Ideally, like what I'd like to see is the information presented, maybe, kind of like the help guides are, whether there's some videos in there too of actual, like just YouTube, like this is how you do it. But I would like also, maybe some user content links down there too. Just if someone's like, okay, this was great, but it was generic. I want to see how Majique does it. I want to see how Jason Freeman does it, or whoever has content, someone out there, I'm sure there's a couple users that did it. So yeah,
absolutely, man. Just holler at me and it's yours.
Perfect. Well, appreciate it.
And you're welcome to hang around or depart, whatever you need to do. But I'm going to go on into the TTATO Fantasy Football League and talk a little bit about that, and then we're going to close out the show and call it in the can for the week.
All right, sounds good. Have a good rest of your night, Majique.
Hey, man, you too. Thanks again for being on, Jordan. Appreciate you.
Yeah, thanks.
All right, so a lot of good information came out of that brief dialogue with Jordan. I mean, it's tough to be in his shoes or anybody in the background shoes because, for me to make a suggestion, oh my God, it's the greatest suggestion since sliced bread. And when you've got, 20, 30, 40 people with that same mindset, it becomes difficult to parse that stuff out so that you're not, overly offending anyone, and you're not doing something that would make some others believe you're choosing sides. God forbid if anything I ever suggested became a reality and there was scuttlebutt about, oh, he has TTATO, that's the only reason they did it. No, that's not the case. It's for the betterment of the game. Otherwise, I wouldn't be doing this show. I got better things to do on Thursday nights, especially during football season. I think there's a game on right now, Cincinnati and the Jets, and I think one of my defenses in fantasy is Cincinnati. So what a hell of a segue. Can you guys tell I've been doing this stuff for years? We're going to go to the Yahoo football league and take a quick look at that. So let's jump on over there and see what we got going on. All right, I'm back. Understand that my microphone may have not been working while I was sharing the screen, so I can encapsulate what you were seeing there, and that is that it's a 16-team league, and the players are pretty scarce when it comes to filling those teams. We've had the draft, of course, several weeks back. It's been a competitive game. No real dominating teams in that league. The 4 conferences or divisions were named after active coaches, and we kind of focused on Reed there, of course, sending our prayers and get well wishes and good health to him. I know he had some medical concerns after the last game with the Chiefs there after the ball game. The other thing I was pointing out is that each league, each division, the leader is 3-0, except for one division. And in that division, the leader's 2-1. And the reason that's important is because 2 of those teams in that division are 0-3 right now, and they're playing each other this week. So, should that leader lose this week, that team that hasn't won will be a game, 2 games out at the worst, I think it is. So they're still in it. It's still early, and it is a very competitive league. So Mike Myers with the Haddon bunch there, and Phil Weist with his team. It's going to be a good battle. I'm going to keep my eye on it. Well, anyway, if you guys want to know more information about the TTATO Football League, it is a Yahoo team, Yahoo League. So holler at me and I can send you the link and you can look at it yourself. Just laugh at us. And as I've mentioned before, when the season is concluded, some coaches say, oh, this is not for me, and they vacate a team. And we'll fill those on a first come, first served basis toward the beginning of next season. So just before the draft, I'll put a solicitation out there that we have X number of teams available, and we're going to take the first come, first serve approach. But anyway, hopefully you've learned something in this show, or at least had some questions answered. Jordan does a pretty good job for us by being candid and giving us some of the information that's behind the scene. And the clue that my microphone was off, I have to say it. It goes out to Wardo YT. He's blasting the comment section, so he let me know that the mic was off or that I was muted. So, Wardo, even though you can be a Nimrod sometimes, buddy, thank you for that. So, from the rest of the night, enjoy your football game if you're going to watch it. And thanks for tuning in for this one. I'm Majique, and I'm your host. This is another episode of TTATO. Thank you for tuning in.